trends and the latest prices, and for getting social in crypto, you want to go to CryptoCompare.com, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Woo!
Woo! That's right. You are listening to what is happening in tech and science news today, baby. Woo! It is Sovryn Tech, and I am, the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, here for you, baby. But this is exciting. I am not alone, and if you'll excuse me, I'm actually going to have a seat because I cannot stand for all this. Woo! I am joined by two people this week, actually. This is a rarity in Sovryn Tech. It's happened before. We have the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy, of course.
Hi.
Cat sounds. I think that
you dressed me up in a cat suit in your pictures, in your show art.
I do that, but I won't go into that story. But and of course, I am joined by one of just my favorite people on planet Earth, without a doubt. And actually, as many people know her on Sovryn Tech as the amazing Pixel. I am joined by Paige Peterson. There it is.
Hello.
Yes, I love it. All in studio. It's a great time. And of course, anyway, we're going to make this a good one. So we've got, there's so many things that we could talk about. This is just a group of people that, we could talk about anything. And
we already have been.
Yeah, we already have been. Yeah, exactly. So, I want to get into, because Paige, recently you've been working, or you now work for Zcash, which is a project that I've been very excited about. So we will get into that. But there's just, we could let this ride wherever. And so I want to let people know there's no segments in this episode. It's just going to be totally free for all, free form. We're just going to go for 2 hours and have a good time.
Woo.
Yeah, there it is. We've got a good woo. Go ahead, Stephanie. Give us a woo.
Woo.
Yeah. All right. You're getting really good at that.
I've been practicing.
Yeah. So anyway, Paige, let's just ask you right out. How the hell are you doing?
I'm doing super awesome, especially now that I'm in New Hampshire.
Yeah, you're living here now. Now, that itself is exciting.
Yes.
So, which is great, because before you were in, of course, San Francisco.
Yeah.
You're in the California, the Silicon Valley area, blah, blah, blah. So what's your experience so far being in New Hampshire? You've been here, almost a year? A few months?
I moved out of California earlier this year.
Okay.
But technically moved to New Hampshire just in September.
Okay. So it's only, gotcha.
New Hampshire residents in September.
Right.
But it's great. I love non-big city life, to be honest. Like, I've been doing the big city life for the past 10 years or so, and I feel great just like having a small town. I still appreciate, the coffee shops and small things that you get being in a city, but that's not restricted to big cities. So yeah, it's great. And it's, more quiet. It's just a lot more my speed.
Yeah, sure. No, I definitely appreciate that. And I know Stephanie can too. I don't know, just the city. I grew up in New York City. I get it, but it always feels a little grating. I can handle it in small doses.
Yeah.
But, and there's something to be said for living in the city. Like, there's a certain, you can kind of disappear in the crowd. Like, there's a degree of anonymity that you can appreciate when you live in the city. So, there's advantages, disadvantages, but boy, just living out in the country, or not even the country, maybe a little more suburbia, or just a smaller city, whatever, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even say that, it's easier to disappear in a city because there's so many cameras everywhere that maybe it's moot at that point because you are walking past so many stores and they all have their security cameras. So.
Yeah, and this is something I know I've talked about on Sovryn Tech, in an area where you were living nearby, Oakland. They set up effectively
domain
a panopticon.
awareness center.
Yeah, exactly. There's just cameras fucking everywhere. It might as well be London.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's kind of their model.
That's the idea.
Yeah. And did you see that? There's a video being passed around this week of a guy who stole a bucket of gold flakes out of the back of a truck.
Oh, yeah.
It was
the guy,
in New York.
$1 million some odd dollars worth of gold he just grabbed out of a Loomis.
And you could, you saw exactly where he was going. I think he got away because at the time no one noticed. Yeah. But, you could see his face and, therefore he's, being looked for.
Right.
I think all of those video feeds are just from like shops or like, you know, city cameras. So like, you know, you can't really hide that well. I mean,
yeah, that's an interesting point, actually, that now with all the cameras, with all the cameras in the city, that even that ability to be kind of, you know, to disappear in the crowd, you actually can't.
And a lot of places in cities, it's becoming illegal to like wear hoods and like masks and things like that. So.
Yeah, that's problematic. I know there's some interesting, and it's actually amazing, like how the simple solutions, or well, at least temporary solutions, perhaps, that people come up with for this sort of thing. Like there's 3D printed, or not even 3D printed. I think you just print out like these paper glasses, effectively, that you could put on that would thwart, you know, facial recognition software.
Yeah.
And I know there's companies in Japan that are releasing a bunch of different like more sunglasses with a little more substance that can kind of do the same thing. But I mean, you know, how long does all this stuff work for? I mean, you got people shaving their eyebrows in weird ways to throw all this stuff off.
Like the makeup tutorials for like painting your face. I mean, you look really weird, but apparently it works.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of an arms race, you know, and I get it. I really like, it's sad that we're kind of getting on a side tangent here, but
I expect that will be
that'll happen a lot
in the show.
Yeah. But it's sad that the failure rate of biometrics in general, you know, including facial recognition, which I think would be a part of biometrics, you know, in a way, the failure rate should just be brought up by every lawyer in court. Not that we should have to go to court, but, you know, should be brought up, and that should just toss any kind of, you know, system like that right out of the door. In my opinion, that's what should happen.
Yeah. Do you know the failure rate? I'm not like,
I don't know, like modern. I don't know like up to date numbers, but at least in the past 3 years, I know I've reported on it, and I mean it's
well,
bad.
like I remember you talking about it with the fingerprint readers in particular.
Yeah,
that's only one type of biometrics, but those are notoriously bad.
Right. I mean, but the facial recognition software does have its issues. I mean, I think, in my opinion, that's exactly why you get a lot of these like free photo upload services for phones and for whatever else. Like, you know, I mean, Google Photos, Apple Photos, or iPhoto.
Scan everyone's faces.
Well, right. I mean, like they're like, oh yeah, you know, we're putting this into machine learning to be able to organize your photos better. It's like, oh, well, I'm glad my photos, you know, you organize them nicely for me. Who else are you organizing that shit for? You know,
totally.
Yeah, I mean, and they've talked about that. Like they've been kind of. I think it was at the 10.4 event this year for AlphaGook. They talked about how, oh, look at our machine learning now with photos. We can recognize not just that there's a train in the picture. Now we know the color. We know this. We know this. And it's like, and then everybody's cheering. I'm like, what the fuck are you cheering about? It's like, this means like, you know, what else could they use that for? Right. But of course, nobody ever thinks of that, or at least too few people, you know, unfortunately think about that. So, but that's a great point about the city, because I would have stuck with myself the kind of the anonymity that's available, you know, sort of narrative of living in the city. But yeah, that's really not
privacy
true anymore.
in numbers is definitely like a point to consider, but I think like the surveillance stuff kind of just cancels all of that out.
Yeah. No, I agree with that completely. So, you know, all right. So before we get into Zcash, it's actually a great segue into Zcash, because privacy is at the heart of that.
Yep.
And when we talk about Zcash, I think we'll stick to a lot of the more technical aspects and maybe what the future holds and all this. But you know, on the privacy, I mean, how do you feel, Paige? And actually, Stephanie, I want to hear from you too on this. Like, how do you feel about kind of I don't like to use these sorts of catchy terms, but like the war on privacy. I mean, you know, do we still have some degree of privacy, or like, can we even achieve it? Can we, through various uses of technology, whatever? Like, how do you think that's going? Are people going to lose their privacy completely, do you think, in the far future? Are we on the losing side right now, or is there a chance that we can, you know, get privacy back in the abstract?
I guess I'm hopeful, but I'm not like banking on it.
Yeah.
I don't know, just like even just going back to the photo scanning tools, and like the fact that I'm probably on Facebook a million times, even though I don't have an account, and I'm probably tagged a million times. And like, so it's just like, I don't know how something like those tools would be fixed to prevent surveillance and like lack of privacy, but I think there's also just a huge push from a growing push from various communities and societies around protecting privacy, especially the more, the more bigoted America becomes, and the more afraid people feel about other people around them.
Well, I think there's something to what you're saying, because signal use has gone up 400%, honestly,
Yes.
just in November.
Yeah.
I mean, and we all know why that is. We don't have to mention the name.
Yeah.
But
That'll be the test of the episode. Let's
Yeah.
not say the name.
Yeah,
or at
let's
least for me, that'll be a test.
all right. We'll try not to say the name. I like that. So I think you're right, that people are becoming far more conscious about this sort of thing. You don't want a disaster to happen. I'm not saying a disaster necessarily happened, but just for abstract terms, you don't want a disaster to happen to convince people to do this stuff. You'd want them to be on board with it, in the first place, ahead of time. I agree. There is kind of a push going on. Now, I mean, Stephanie, what do you think? How do you feel about the war on privacy? Do you think that the privacy advocates are winning, or they have a chance? Or what do you see the future?
I see the erosion of privacy as like a glacier that's moving forward, and maybe not even at a glacier pace. Maybe it's faster than a glacier, but it's just this big thing. It's like a cultural force. There are kids growing up who just don't even know what it's like to have privacy, to live in a world where there aren't cameras everywhere, and there aren't social media, and there aren't just every device is recording you potentially. And the devices are literally in everyone's pockets and everyone's hands and every wall and every building and every corner. So, yeah, and they don't know what it's like to go to the airport and not have to
get patted down.
Yeah, and to
close.
have an X-ray of your entire body and get potentially groped by TSA agents. So I think when that's happening, the battle is already lost, I guess, because it's a cultural thing. And people don't want privacy. I remember when I was a kid, I tell this story a lot on the show, but when I was a kid, my mom would always say well, don't give out your address. Don't give out your information. We would go to a store and they'd say, oh, do you want to sign up for our circular, our mailing list? And, you can get coupons. And she, even with the coupons, she wouldn't be fooled. She'd say no, don't give out your personal information because they'll just spam you and they might try to scam you. And she was totally right. That's exactly what happens.
Right.
So I grew up with cautions about those things, but people who are younger than us, they didn't have as many cautions. Maybe they got exposed to the internet, so they had to sort of develop a shield a little bit and try to get their privacy. But most people, I think, they think they have nothing to hide. They think oh, well, who'd be Interested in me? I'm just Joe Schmo, I'm not a target, so they just don't care.
Yeah.
Nude pictures, everybody has nudes,
Sure.
I don't know. Call me old fashioned, but I still feel weird about sexting people pictures,
Yeah.
So I think on a cultural front, we're definitely losing the battle for privacy. If it's a battle,
do you think it can be won though by the privacy advocates? Do you think there's a chance?
No, I think they will always be in the minority.
Uh-huh. Mm.
I think they will, there might be little pockets where you can kind of take back little pieces of privacy, but it is literally impossible, or you would have to disrupt your life so much. If you want to go out anywhere in public and avoid facial recognition, you have to shave your eyebrows and wear one contact lens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That changes your eye color and
all those
fuck up
tricks.
Your face.
Yeah.
And you it's just kind of impossible. It's so disruptive to your life to have complete privacy. You can get privacy in little areas. You can use encrypted messaging and email and stuff. Mm-hmm. But even PGP is a pain in the ass. I barely use it anymore.
Sure.
Because it's just hard,
Well, it's gotten easier, but I do understand what you're saying. Yeah.
It has gotten easier, but not many people use it. Even the people I'm friends with who probably should care about this stuff and do care about it, but not enough to use PGP all the time.
Well,
you know what I mean?
It's still kind of inconvenient. You're right.
It's still kind of inconvenient,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
It's always
pretty inconvenient.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
The more I think maybe the last encrypted email I sent was to you with PGP.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I remember that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. Yeah. We passed the Bechdel test on the show. Yeah. And then encrypted emailing. That's going to be the Murphy test.
The Murphy test.
Do two women encrypted email each other about something other than a man?
Love it.
Yeah, so I just generally, I have a pretty, like, I don't know if it's a cynical view, but I think most people don't care about privacy, and so therefore it's not going to be a priority for people to preserve their privacy. And then the people who do care about it, they care about it to different degrees, and most people aren't, like, so paranoid about it that they're willing to, like, move to a remote area and shave their eyebrows and shit like that.
Right. Yeah, did you have anything you wanted to say to that page, or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just like going off of that, even just like having a cell phone, right? Like,
oh, it's a block of sensors.
Yeah, so people are like, even most people don't even realize how many sensors are on it.
Right.
Like, they don't even realize that the towers are tracking exactly where you are.
Yeah.
Like, so there's like, I used to, you know, and I still kind of do this just to like maybe at least like not give Google all of my information, but like instead of like if I'm searching directions to some place, like start from like a nearby business instead of my house or my friend's house or something like that. So make it a nearby destination. But like even with that, sure, you're not like giving Google the exact data, but your phone's with you, and therefore your cell phone company knows
still
exactly
telling you
where
everything.
you're going.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Stephanie, like, I definitely, I really appreciate that point. I think it's something that's, as far as like the up and coming generation, as far as them not caring about privacy, I think that we're at the point where we're going to see whether or not that's true. Because I sort of feel like Snapchat was a response to, I mean, even though it doesn't really give you privacy, like, I don't think anybody actually believes they delete those pictures in 24 hours, from their own servers.
No, I think people are wise to that, but like, what can you do? There's just not that many options.
There's not, right. There aren't many other options. But I've felt like that the reason it's so popular is because, teens and whatever else, like they do want privacy for whatever reason that happens to be. However, ever since the company changed their name to Snap, and now they have those Snap glasses, or maybe I forget the name of it.
Snap glasses.
I talked about it on Sovereign Tech a little while ago, but they have, maybe it's Snap Shades or something, whatever they ended up calling the things. But they're these glasses they're sunglasses.
Like Specs?
Oh, Specs. That's it. Yes, it's Specs. Thank you. Yeah, so Specs. So they're glasses with a little camera on them. That's what they are, and they can take video or they can take pictures, whatever. If those end up, and it doesn't actually look like they're popular. Like, it seems what happens is that nobody's really bought them. They've just had like these drop points, and a bunch of people have gotten their hands on them because so point being is that if teens jump on with Specs, then I'm going to say, okay, no, the whole Snapchat thing had nothing to do with teens wanting privacy. Or at least they're not really conscious of what was going down or of what's going down.
I think Snapchat's just a new thing that your parents don't know about, so that's why they like it.
Yeah, well, right. That's why Facebook became big, is because parents weren't on it originally. So, yeah, absolutely. So we'll see. I think that remains to be seen what what the up-and-coming generation, what the millennials, well, even though everybody here is a millennial, what they think about, privacy in general and all that. But, yeah, I mean, my take is I think I agree with you, Paige, where I think we could, there's a chance that privacy advocates could win, or at least the option will exist. But yeah, it's not looking too hopeful. It's really not looking too good on those sorts of things. But I'll tell you, one of the hopeful things, and I want to get into this now, one of the hopeful things that's out there, and I told people, I said, regardless of how you feel about this, just be excited that zero knowledge proofs is a real deal. It's in existence today, and that's exciting. Zcash. Okay. I mean, this is the thing. It is out there. Woo. Yeah, that is worth a woo. Absolutely. So, Paige, now I know that this is a challenge for anyone, including the people at Zcash, but if you could, kind of briefly, maybe 40-foot view, what is Zcash? I mean, I've talked about it on the show before, but I think it'd be great to hear from you.
Of course. So Zcash is a fork of Bitcoin. It's its own blockchain, and it implements a security layer using zero-knowledge proofs, which allow you to verify transaction data that is encrypted without revealing that data. So you can essentially verify that there's truth behind the encrypted data without it needing to be public or to be even just revealed to the person verifying it. Mm-hmm. So it essentially it can act exactly like Bitcoin. We have addresses which act exactly how Bitcoin does in a public way. So you can send Zcash between two of these, we call them transparent addresses, and it acts and behaves exactly like Bitcoin. But where the privacy side comes in is these other types of addresses called shielded addresses, which the address itself is not revealed on the blockchain, nor is the value held by the balance held by the address revealed.
Okay, so but a transaction is just kind of like ethereally recorded. Like, I mean, like yes. You know a transaction happened, yes. but you have no information about that transaction.
Exactly.
Okay.
So especially if you're sending between two shielded addresses, so you can send in between these transparent and shielded addresses. But if you're sending just in between shielded addresses, there's no record of that transaction actually happening except for the people that did the transaction. Like they have a transaction ID that they can look up on a block explorer and see like some value went from some address to another address, and it doesn't reveal anything. But even without, if you didn't know that transaction happened, you wouldn't be able to like find that transaction in the first place. Like you can't link any transactions as long as they're shielded. You can't link them in Zcash. So that's one of the biggest benefits, is removing the linkability that Bitcoin has. Like you can trace money all the way back to, the Coinbase, like where it started, if you really wanted to. So the biggest benefit is kind of breaking those links. And even if you had transparent addresses for one reason or another, or like maybe your friend was only using a transparent address, as long as you have a shielded address somewhere in that chain, like that transaction chain, you break the link of like that Zcash being traced back to its earliest history.
Okay, so let's side tangent here a bit, and then we'll circle back on Zcash, because I think that like the Coinbase situation actually that just occurred recently is an interesting one. Well, first off, I'll say this, and we'll get into the Coinbase bit. But one of the things that's been going on with Bitcoin, where a lot of money has been spent in the blockchain space, and I don't think people realized it, and they probably went to some kind of blockchain conference of some kind, and they didn't even notice that some of the not the vendors, but whoever, the people out on the vending floor, you name it, all these companies that are schlepping around their their cards and everything, what they were really doing there, and that is there's a huge business around de-anonymizing Bitcoin, like in companies that their sole purpose is tracing all of these interactions.
Analytics.
Yeah, all analytics, exactly. And I mean, this is a booming business. Off the top of my head, I can think of 3 companies, and they are huge, that are, or at least they're getting a lot of money, I should say, to get into this. And obviously, there's various bodies that would be interested in that for whatever reason. So that's a thing, that's a very real thing. And personally, I see that as kind of a flaw. I mean, just in my own opinion, I see that as a flaw because, it's one of the things I've talked about with Zcash, where I love the fact that they went, because originally it was zero coin, based off of Matthew Green's paper from, 2013, something like that. I loved that they used the term cash, because when I think cash, I think of an exchange with, something that nobody really, it can be hand to hand and nobody needs to be the wiser about it. You know?
Like there's at least with cash, there's technically like serial numbers, but like no one uses that.
No, right. Yeah. Most people don't pay no attention to it. And there's a real, I don't know. Yeah. Cash has connotations to it that I really like.
I love cash. I use cash all the time. It's just like, I don't need my credit card company knowing like where I'm buying groceries, and like they don't need to know that. Like why So might as well just go out and get cash every once in a while and spend cash instead.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. So this is a problem. Like, I think a lot of people got excited about Bitcoin because they saw the potential to where they could use it like they were used to using, good old fashioned cash in a way. But now we're finding out, well, that's not exactly how it's shaping up. There's lots of companies that are spending a lot of time on making sure that these things aren't in any way anonymous or pseudonymous or whatever. And I mean, and it's not even, here's the thing is that, look, people wanting that doesn't even, imply nefariousness. It's just, hey, you don't need to know. Like you said with the credit cards, there's no reason for you to know what the hell I'm buying.
Yeah.
Like whose business is it of yours, to know that?
Yeah.
I mean, one can make a case, well, it's a credit card company, they're giving you credit, blah, 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 but we're not going there. Bottom line is that, nobody needs to know this shit. And so I think that's really exciting. And it's one of the reasons I've been excited for a long time about, Zero Coin and now Zcash, in that, okay, no, this is kind of that ethos is that, who needs to know? You don't need to know.
Financial privacy is just as important as any other type of privacy.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree with that completely.
Sorry to jump in here, but whenever somebody talks about financial privacy, I think people can have trouble seeing examples of why it might be important. They think, oh yeah, well, like drug dealers and money launderers, sure, they need that. But what about the person who is getting divorced from an abusive spouse and doesn't want them to see that they're setting up to get their own apartment or to get food to move out? Or what about the kid that has parents that are draconian and doesn't want their parents to see what they're spending money on?
Right.
What about the 16-year-old girl who's buying birth control and doesn't want her dad to know because her dad will beat her up or something? What about, there's all kinds of situations where you could legitimately, maybe the average person could side with somebody and feel compassion for somebody who needs financial privacy for, quote, legitimate reasons, and they're not a drug dealer or a money launderer or a hitman. They're just trying to basically live their life. In Afghanistan, there are these two ladies that I interviewed at once for Let's Talk Bitcoin, and one of them was Farshta Furrow. She has the Code to Inspire Foundation, and she teaches girls, and she's Afghanistani, and she teaches girls in Afghanistan how to code. And she said that if you're a girl in Afghanistan and you come home with any cash, your dad will just take it from you.
Yeah.
Your parents will take it from you, and you can't really have your own money. And so if you have a Bitcoin wallet, nobody can take it from you, right? Unless you give it to them. So, and the same thing with Zcash, it's just another layer of protection. So yeah.
Until they start looking at the Bitcoin blockchain and they see, or they associate an address with your identity. That's where...
exactly. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, and that's an important thing too. I want to ask this about Zcash as you are an employee. I think what happens is a lot of people don't think the way that Stephanie was just describing that, well, in America, we don't have to worry about that. Yeah, but what about in other parts of the world where absolutely, you're going to get beaten for just bringing home cash and being a woman.
Yeah.
So, I mean, does Zcash have a world view? I mean, they're not just thinking America, America.
Yeah. We're definitely thinking about various different cultures and communities all around the world. And, even there's a business side of this as well. If you are, if you have competitors, you don't want to reveal your financial reports to competitors, right? That's a simple, very basic understanding of markets. You want to keep an edge, and therefore revealing financial transactions or who you're doing business with can be detrimental.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, and that's great. And I'm glad to hear that, because I mean, even in, we've been to quite a few Bitcoin and blockchain conferences and all that. And sadly, I feel like a lot of people there really do just have a very American centric view. And which is a shame. I mean, there's people that had a more worldview as well, because that's one of the beauties was the idea, well, you don't have to pay all the crazy fees with Western Union. You don't have to worry about all these bodies that are controlling where the money can go whenever. If somebody, if your buddy in Uganda needs something, you can give them the hookup,
Sometimes people do take a worldview, but it's kind of interesting because sometimes they try to take a global view on cryptocurrencies, but they don't really understand the issues that are present when you actually try to do that,
Oh, you can fail at that. People taking Bitcoin to Africa.
Right. Yeah. I was thinking of that interview
Yeah.
with Richard. What's his name? I'm sorry. I forgot his name. But there was this person that I interviewed that he was a white guy from England, and he tried to go to Kenya and introduce Bitcoin to some communities, and he hooked up with an orphanage in Nairobi, and there were all these problems. First of all, you can't even really have a tablet because it's an item that is easily stolen.
Right.
And how do you protect it? And how are you going to tell these people, oh, you should hold on to your Bitcoin when the value is fluctuating up and down, and they don't know if it's going to drop 50% in value by next month, but they need it to actually pay for food and stuff, then that's kind of bad to be depending on it. So there were all these logistical issues. And also it smacks of a white person going to Africa and telling them how to live and,
He
spreading
even said
Christianity.
that.
Yeah.
He says, he's look, these people have seen this before. I am the white man. Here I come with,
Right.
I will save you, and all this. And
so I really like that interview because it exposed some of the actual real logistical issues. I'm not saying everybody who's saying oh yeah, cryptocurrency is great for the planet is like that, but and even I'm guilty of this because I haven't gone to other countries and tried to get people to use Bitcoin or anything. I haven't tried to get microloans or anything. But I think sometimes it's maybe lacking perspective a little bit. But I do think that the basic idea is there. If some of the infrastructure and logistical challenges can be solved. There's areas of the planet that don't have reliable internet. There's lots of the planet that doesn't have reliable internet. There's areas that don't have computers, readily accessible.
Yeah.
So how are you going to install Linux and to have Zcash on it? So, there's challenges, but there's also potential there.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're definitely very dependent on the larger ecosystem and community to help us grow Zcash. We only have a Linux client that you have to install using command line, and you have to run it using command line.
Which,
so we're
damn it, I applaud. I think that's great because it's no, let the people that really know what's going on get their hands dirty with this.
I don't because I don't know how to do a command line. I can't.
But you can watch the install video and it will help you.
Very familiar voice on that.
I narrated the install video and I still can't figure out how to install it. No. I would like to try it, but honestly, I am intimidated by doing command line stuff.
Yeah.
I could do it. I used to do DOS and CD / and that kind of shit, but I haven't done it lately. So.
Yeah, there was on the initial version there was a kind of a problem in the instructions that a lot of users were running into. So we just recently released a separate video that has instructions that should work for everyone, so maybe give it another shot.
So, okay, well, I do want to get into the Coinbase story, but I think maybe we'll save that for a little bit because now we're getting into the install, and I want to talk about this because I imagine people are going to hear this show and they're going to be like, well, hey, how do I get this? How do I run this? Zcash. And now I want to ask this out of the gate, and then I want to get into what exactly it takes, but I just want to make sure I get this question in. So How many? So the system requirements to run the Zcash wallet client, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Does it really? Was it 4 gig of RAM?
Okay, so there is. If you're just installing it the way that we have written out in the install video, then it shouldn't require a lot of RAM, but there is a situation where if you're sending to or from a shielded address, so essentially if you're creating a zero knowledge proof, that at that point you need for at least 4 gigs of RAM to generate that transaction. So
because other than that, the specs seem pretty minimal.
Yes, and that is that's one of our kind of near goals to reduce that requirement.
Awesome.
We just kind of had set a launch date, and we wanted to get this proof of concept out that people could use. So
yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I understand that. I mean, that was when I saw that, I was like that was
that's not going to work.
critique.
I mean, for phones, that doesn't even work at all, right?
Right. I mean, just now in the past year, have phones with 4 gig or 6
barely,
gig of RAM.
Yeah. With your phone, you can't turn off all the other processes, so you're probably only working with 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So
this is well known. This is something that's being worked
yes.
out, which is great because that's some of the things I wanted to talk about is future roadmap. What's coming?
Yeah.
You know.
So yeah, there is this. It's essentially because you're creating a zero knowledge proof. You're creating like this huge cryptographic thing all at once, and you just need a lot of memory to store all that data. But the core developers say that they, I don't know. I can't say to how much exactly, but it could be reduced like between 20 and 80%, but that doesn't really give you much.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I get it.
It will be reduced, but
yeah, I mean it's intensive, you know. I mean, doing that level of cryptography and all that, especially for something really kind of new. I mean, very new. You know, I understand that. You know, I really do. So that's something for people to be aware of. I think that's like the first point that needs to be gotten out there because I know some people who I've talked to, they're running machines that have 2 gig and that's about it. Like that's kind of their Linux machines because now that gets into the other point, which is right now the client. And you can correct me on any of this. The client or the wallet, whatever, that's only installable on Linux, kind of like what we were just saying.
Yeah, the core clients. But there are ports, like the whole. If you kind of look mostly in our community forum.
What's the website?
Our main website is z.cash.
Love that. Okay. Yeah.
And the forum, if you want to check out like different projects from people, is forum.z.cash.
Okay. Perfect.
But there's like different ports. I have right now I'm actually like running a small mining thing on my Mac back at home.
Okay.
Just, I don't run it all the time because I use my Mac for other things and like it takes up all of the computing power.
What year's your Mac?
It's old. It's like maybe maybe it's only 2013 or 2012.
Well, it's not too bad.
It's not too bad, but it's an Air, and it's just like very minimal specs.
Yeah,
like it was a work computer that they let me take.
Right. Okay. No. Well, that's fair. So I mean, there's probably community built Windows clients. And,
yes, and there's gonna be more. It's just there's some existing wallets that have integrated Zcash into them. So like Jack's wallet.
Have they already put Zcash in?
Yep. They have
Zcash. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Okay, now that's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a fan of Jax.
Yeah.
I know. Well, I'm not going to get into the details behind that, but like that's pretty much the same team as I understand it that did Rush Wallet,
yes.
Which I love.
Anthony,
Rush Wallet. Yeah, Anthony Diorio, who's been on Sovereign Tech in the past.
Yeah, they've been very supportive of us and like really excited to integrate. They were one of they had it integrated on day one from launch. So
that's fantastic.
Kudos to them.
Okay, yeah, how I missed that, I'm not sure, but that is exciting to know. Okay, so in some ways that kind of even solves that whole issue. Like that if you want a wallet, well, if Jax has it, Jax works on fucking every. I mean, they even have a Firefox add-on.
Yes.
So like that's
as
fantastic.
far as I know, they only support transparent addresses, though. That's
there's the rub.
catch.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
So you can still, hold Zcash, and that kind of circles back into the linkability thing where. Maybe you're required to only have a transparent address because the shielded addresses require so much RAM when you're creating transactions. So that's probably the biggest reason why you would want to use a transparent address right now.
Right.
To store on a mobile or whatever.
Just start getting your hands on it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's where the linkability is beneficial, or thinking about linkability is beneficial. So if you send... Say you can only send to a transparent address, but if you send it first to a shielded address and then to the transparent address and then back to a shielded address or something, you're basically an isolated transparent address. Like on either side, there's shielded transactions, right? So there isn't any like link in the chain of transactions like there is with Bitcoin. Like you can't associate that transparent address with a previous address. Unless you did some like investigative work, or maybe like you could correlate values sent or IP addresses, maybe if you really dug deep. But use Tor and don't send the same address. Like if you're worried about linkability of value, like someone seeing that someone sent this value before and then it was sent later on,
right?
you could sort of make a correlation there. Just like break up the transactions or do something where you're not sending the same value twice.
Yeah, I think there's been a series over the past few years. Bitcoin's been a great primer in a lot of ways, in that there's been a series of best practices for if you want to use Bitcoin privately.
Yes.
Always use those with any cryptocurrency,
yes.
in my opinion. All those ideas, using Tor and the others you mentioned.
Yes, I would say that Zcash does benefit, or it does kind of remove the need for one kind of general best practice in Bitcoin, which is change addresses.
Uh-huh.
You can, because shielded addresses and the, sending Zcash between them is not like, sending between two shielded addresses in Zcash looks like any other sending between two shielded addresses in Zcash. That's like the power of the privacy. Like, you don't know who sent what when.
Right.
So if you're sending your change, like you don't want to send a full balance to someone else, you're sending change back to the original address, which is kind of like a no-no for Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make new addresses for each change. You can do that with Zcash because it's just a shielded, the Zcash stays shielded, and therefore there isn't any, like, people aren't going to be aware of your address at that point. So people can actually reuse addresses in Zcash, and there isn't like this problem there is with Bitcoin.
Right. So I mean, baked in, like, these are ideas that people have wanted to implement in Bitcoin. Some people have wanted, like, you take CoinJoin, like the Dark Wallet or Samurai Wallet. There's a few of these that do this sort of thing. But right here, it's already built in. It's into Zcash.
Yeah. Well, it's different. Our kind of privacy, I'm blanking on the word right now, but like the scope of the privacy or the anonymity set is much larger than what you would get with a CoinJoin type situation where you're just like taking a handful of transactions and like bundling them together and mixing them all up.
Right.
With Zcash, all like sending Zcash from one shielded address to another shielded address, it looks the same.
Yeah.
So it's essentially taking all of the Zcash users, and that is your anonymity set.
Right.
I have trouble with that word sometimes.
I mean, Stephanie, do you have any thoughts on all of this? I mean, what do you think?
I really want to try it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you can, like, the Jax thing is a kind of a game changer. Like, that makes it like, I hear that and I'm like, oh yeah, I could do this right now. Yeah. I don't have to install Linux. And
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to. And it's also on Shapeshift. So if you have Bitcoin or something, you can just Shapeshift it to some Zcash.
Fantastic. So now I want to talk just a little bit about the transparent and shielded.
Yes.
So transparent, I mean, these terms, I know they were very well thought out, like how exactly we're going to, what are we going to name these things?
Yeah.
And so, but I think the terms are, it's one word that does do a really good job of explaining what exactly it is. Transparent means it's out in the open. People can look at it, see it, it's public, it's out there. Shielded means it's, hidden, protected, all of these things. Yep. And so that if people are wondering, like, okay, what's the shielded and hidden? Or what's the shielded and transparent? That's it. That's exactly what it sounds like, is that it's protected, private, blah, 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 if it's shielded. And then if it's transparent, it's out there, it's public.
Yep. And where it gets a little more complex, and maybe I won't like dive too deep into the details because I still haven't figured out how the best way to explain this myself. But you can send between shielded and transparent addresses. And that brings in different properties of privacy. So, for example, if you're sending from transparent to a shielded address, the transparent address will have an output value, and you'll see the output value. But the shielded address won't have any of that, but you'll know that that value is held by some shielded address, right? Like, you know that there's been an output from a transparent to a shielded. You don't know what shielded address is holding that value, but you know that there is some address out there.
Gotcha.
So if you did that and you didn't send the entire balance from the shielded address, would there be change that goes to another shielded address? Or Would there be another output to another shielded? Do you know what I'm saying?
If you, I mean, it's up to you how you create the transaction. So you could send change to another shielded address, and it could be like split up in between two addresses, and therefore it's even more, you don't really know what's going on. And then similarly with like the opposite, we're calling it like de-shielding when you're sending from shielded to transparent. You're de-shielding the Zcash. You're making it public.
Right.
In that situation, you don't know anything about the sending address or the sending output, but you can see that there's a transparent address that has received this value.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
So there is like, it gets a little complex with the like privacy implications of those things. And we're still kind of trying to figure out how to like best communicate this stuff. But I think, people, as long as people understand that if you're sending to or from a transparent address, that value is out in the open, even if it's being sent to or from a shielded address, there's some, you're still revealing some information.
Right.
So use all shielded addresses. I mean, we need to, fix the memory requirements for all of that. But,
sure.
Once that happens, yeah, everyone should just use shielded.
Yeah. I mean, if it's built in, it's baked in, just do it by default.
Yeah.
Like, just like if we were talking about PGP
right,
earlier.
exactly.
If PGP was just part of the program, who the hell wouldn't turn it on? Like,
exactly.
Of course. Okay. No, it's automatically PGP. Great. And you don't even have to think about it.
Yeah.
So now that leads me to a question. Now, one of the things I remember when Zcash was first kind of announced, I think there was a TechCrunch story about it. And in that, at the time, I think even like the developers might have been, I read it. I think I called the episode The Return of Zero Coin or something. It was a little while ago. Yeah. I can remember the cover art for it. It's a picture of me holding like a Google Cardboard to my head.
Okay.
So anyway, so if you look for that, you'll know. But in that, now I seem to remember in that story that it said that there would be a way, even in a shielded, in this case, now we know the term, in a shielded transaction, that you could prove that, say, you bought something.
Yeah.
So, like, can you speak to how exactly that works? Because this is interesting to me. Because one of the things that how to put this? One of the few things that I think are really valid in the act of human exchange is the bill of sale. Like, I think that's a fine thing. It's existed with humans for thousands of years. Okay, I'm not one for contracts really, but that's another story. Okay, but bills of sale was effectively described in this article. Like, yeah, you could prove that you did this and this, even though it was like kind of the shielded thing.
Yeah.
Can you explain, like, is that true first, and then second, like, kind of how that works, perhaps?
Yes, it's totally true.
Awesome.
And it's really cool how it's done. So with these shielded addresses, you actually have two sets of key pairs. So you have the standard Bitcoin, like public private key, but it's really like a paying, like a key that you pay to and a key that you can spend from.
Okay.
So that's the first set. But with these shielded addresses, you have a second set, which is transmission key and viewing key. And the transmission key is what is used to essentially encrypt the data too. So this receiver has this public transmission key, which the sender will encrypt all this transaction data to.
Okay.
And then the receiver has this viewing key, which is essentially a private key, and the private key reveals the data. So if you give that viewing key, it's separate from the spending key. So if you have the viewing key, it doesn't mean you can spend it. But if you have this viewing key, then you can share it with, someone else and be essentially reveal, reveal what's in the transaction. I mean, that has a ton of use cases in and of itself. Being able to, like, even like, I maybe hate to bring it up, but even like regulatory things, like being able to kind of prove what data or the transactions that you're doing within your business, or being able to keep records but still be able to verify it with governments. But in addition, there is, with every transaction between shielded addresses, there is an encrypted memo field that's built in. So You can add in a small bit of data. I don't know I forget the exact size.
And this is an immutable memo? Like, I mean, this isn't something you can change, of course, right?
It
goes in the blockchain.
It goes in the blockchain.
Got it.
And if you don't input a memo, it just enters in a bunch of zeros, so you can't really tell what. It helps to just prevent being able to decipher what the actual memo is, or at least like kind of see what kind of memo it is. So kind of between those two tools, like being able to have the viewing key and being able to input a memo, like for example, these memo fields are really great for just like a return address, because receiving a shielded Zcash, you don't know the sender.
Right.
Like that's kind of built into the design. But if the sender actually inputs like a return address, say you're buying something from a merchant or a service, and it's not, you receive the product and it's broken, or you want to return it, then as long as the merchant was given a return address in that memo field, then they can issue a refund, and it kind of acts as like a bill of sale. And
yeah, I love it. I think that regulations are not securing your financials. How fucking important is that? I mean, like regardless of how you want to go about that, whether you're dealing with regulatory bodies or not, I mean, it's great to just do that, whatever, in a very secure way, as secure as possible. So yeah, and the bill of sale thing, like that was one of the things that I was like, okay, yeah, because this is, it's a dream come true for me, because it's like, okay, so here we go. We can do very private, transactions, but at the same time, you can still, if you need to, you can prove, yeah, I mean, this is, if somebody went to go buy a car, with Zcash, which is a future I hope to see. Yeah, right. I mean, you do two, between two shielded accounts or wallets, but you can still prove it, even though it's shielded. I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's like the way they've implemented it, it's very perfect and useful. I definitely hope to see one day, maybe at a point we can actually just remove the transparent part of like the Bitcoin-y part of Zcash.
Right. It'll be seen as so anathema. It's just we don't want anything to do with that.
Once we reduce the memory requirements and all that stuff, why even use the transparent part? I mean, you have Bitcoin already, so...
Yeah, this is a thing that I've never really talked before, but it's always been a little fear of mine. I just can't really necessarily substantiate it. But one of the issues with like a real public ledger is that I think you could set people up pretty easily. Like, I think you could do a lot of things where you could say, oh, well, hey, I sent this, and like, I think you could create with like a very public ledger like Bitcoin. I think you could really like create a situation where I think you could make people maybe look like they're doing something that they're not. And that's always been a huge concern of mine, which is, that goes for privacy across the board. That can be a very abstract subject. But I think, if we got into where we're doing, these shielded transactions, that sort of thing, what a person does is what a person does, and, who knows who's using what. And I love it. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. And the technology is just super inspiring, and like the team is super inspiring.
Now that's something too, the team. I want to talk about this because I think, and I trust you, Paige, I trust you like implicitly. And so, a lot of people don't look hard enough, I think, at, okay, who's making this?
Oh, yeah.
And they're not asking why. Like, I could mention a few projects, and I could mention the person, and they've been very public about perhaps their past life. And I go, oh, now I get why they're doing what they're doing. Okay. So looking at the team is very important. Now, tell me about the team. Like great people. You could be as broad or, however you want it, don't reveal anything you don't want to, of course.
They're a great group of people. I've never felt so like motivated just by the team itself, just forget the technology. They're just like super fun and like super passionate themselves. So it kind of creates this like feedback loop of like when we're all like working during the day, it's like, oh, like, can you help me with this? Of course. Yeah. Like, it's just a very warming place to, I just feel very included there. right from the start as well, because I've only been there for a few months. So
sure. I mean, the lead guy is Zuko.
Yes, Zuko is amazing. He's super
smart. Not to be
smart.
confused with Danny Zuko of Greece.
No.
But yeah.
I never thought of that.
Yeah. That's how I know he doesn't look like that, but I always picture him like wearing a leather jacket that says T-Birds on the back, and he's got the, kind of the cowlick hair. But no, he doesn't have that at all. Anyway, so
yeah, he's a great CEO. He knows how to run the business, and honestly, he's had this other company which he isn't really a part of so much anymore, called Least Authority File System. It was basically one of the first distributed decentralized storage platforms. Early
now
2000s.
That's been around for a while.
Yeah,
Yeah,
at least a decade, I think, at this point. And
which is something, I mean, this is, and if I can't say this, we can edit it, but you're telling me, I mean, Zuko's, and I didn't know this, he's worked with some big names in cryptography.
Yeah, he's a cypherpunk.
Yeah, I mean, he's right. He's the real deal.
He's the old school.
Right.
Yeah, he's got it.
Yeah. I mean, he's worked, with the really big names. I mean, Chom, all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, which is, and really what was his company again? Tahoe there.
Tahoe LAF, Least Authority File System.
Right, exactly. Now, I mean, that came out of Mojo Nation.
Mojo Nation was kind of this is my very general understanding. Mojo Nation was this big project that a lot of different people that were interested in decentralized networks were working on, including Bram Cohen from BitTorrent.
Right. Yeah. I mean, all the great stuff has come out of this original little brain think tank there.
Yeah, and they all realized that this Mojo Nation concept was just really grandiose and almost trying to do too much. So they all kind of ended up just splintering out, realizing that it was going to fail. It wasn't going to reach its potential. Splintering out. Bram went and did BitTorrent.
Yep.
And Zuko kind of followed through with Tahoe.
Did Tahoe, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, so you got the right pedigree, I think, here. Certainly, at least in the CEO. I'm glad that you're on board. In fact, I've even said that on Cybertech. I was like, well, that kind of says a lot for me.
Thanks.
And I mean, but everybody there, so it's a great, now you all work pretty much remotely. There isn't some big base of operations, which I think is cool too, because I mean, take decentralization all the way, right?
Yeah, totally. We're pretty dispersed out. It makes maybe meetings a little difficult for some people. A developer in New Zealand, he kind of
time
zones are the hardest part, I would say. But
sure.
I'd say the meetings or stuff are kind of arranged to try to include him as much as possible. How big
is the team?
I don't even know. Maybe
Are you under 20?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's the perfect size.
Yeah.
I mean, not that, and I want to get into this, where you see the future going with Zcash. But I've always felt I love, DuckDuckGo's 13 people.
Yeah.
Even companies I'm not the biggest fan of, Instagram, 13 people. I mean, these really small, nimble teams, that is just the best things come out of that shit.
Yeah. We kind of have this core team of people working for Zcash, the company.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also kind of this extended family of advisors and scientists. So I guess I'm not really counting them, but they do help. They review things they come up with new ideas. We call them science projects, but they're essentially just projects that extend Zcash in some capacity. So Matthew Green and Ian Myers are both scientists.
Love Matthew Green.
That work at Johns Hopkins.
Yep, University.
Yep. There's a blog about this a post about this in our blog actually from earlier this year, but they're working on this project called Bolt, which is essentially Lightning Network for Zcash, but making it private.
Wow.
So that's considering all these other kind of outside things outside of the core Zcash protocol, is what a lot of these scientists are working on.
Now, okay, so that's awesome. I think that's great. I love hearing the R&D shit too.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I love what made me so inspired by working for Zcash is the science-based approach. It's just get the science down first and get it there's issues with the whole peer review system. Like there's some problems, but like when it comes down to it, you want scrutiny. You want a lot of eyes to be looking at your science, like especially around security and privacy. You want you want a lot of review, and sometimes that has to be like peer reviewed situations. So, and like that's like a huge important thing for Zcash, and
I applaud it. So, okay, so I want to get into some of the pricing things, because this was an interesting story, and it's actually part of the reason I waited to talk about Zcash on the show, for me to do like a full, breakdown of it. First off is I knew I could get you in the studio, so I was like, no, I'll just have somebody from the damn company, come on, and it's cool to hang out too. So, but now, one thing that I've said for a long time, and that a lot of people have said, and I know, Stephanie, you've heard people say this sort of thing too. And I mean, and obviously, you're one of the co-hosts of Let's Talk Bitcoin, so you know the deal. The one thing that people had said could like overtake Bitcoin. Now, I'm not claiming Zcash is going to overtake Bitcoin, but the one thing that everybody always said, if anything could overtake Bitcoin, it would be something that built anonymity right into it. Okay, and Zcash is really that, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying it's going to do that. I'm just saying that it really...
Sorry, we're playing footsies while you're talking.
I see this. I'll just keep talking. I mean, go for it. Oh, man, it's a good thing this show ain't video. But anyway, so anyway... Yeah, so Zcash is kind of that dream come true in a very real sense. And now what's interesting is that when Zcash, what was the release date for Zcash? Do you remember it was October?
Date?
Yeah, the launch date.
October 28th.
October 28th, that's right. Okay. So on like the day after or a couple of days after, what was the average Zcash?
I don't know if there was even an average. Like, it was just like all over the place. I think the main problem was that exchanges were listing Zcash for the first time, and it was just like random people making bids to sell. So like they were pricing it like super high, like $4,000 per Zcash.
Right, $4,000 per coin.
Yeah,
Zcash,
and like. Right. And that's really just a flaw, I think. There's actually an article I read about this. I don't recall meta details about it, sorry, but if you maybe search around, but it was about like the problem with launching new coins on exchanges and how they can be, there's better ways to essentially implement that, so there isn't this like almost to sort of like reduce the whole like craziness of the free market at the launch of
do something about speculators. Sure. Yep. So
that was the main I think problem with the price, and it's been settling down ever since. It's still a little volatile in times, but
do you know what it is off the top of your head, or like what it was yesterday?
I believe it was around 60.
60? Okay, 60 per Zcash.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was that wild ride that happened. I mean, in fact, I saw like Barry Silbert tweet, Zuko, you're going to be a million or trillionaire. He actually said trillionaire. so I mean, that was crazy. Obviously, I think most people recognized, okay, there's no way that's like the price.
Yeah.
This
we were a little like, oh God, like what did we do? But like, no, it settled down.
Yeah. I thought that, and what you described is kind of to why it was happening and all that. Like, I think that's exactly, what went down.
So was it like at first there was a limited supply of them because there were just people just started mining? And then there were only a few, so they were like, oh, $4,000, please.
Exactly. That's essentially what it was. And we didn't make it any better by introducing this concept of a slow start mining period, which actually just ended 2 days ago, I think. But it was essentially starting. So we kind of mirror Bitcoin's mining, except ours is 4 times as fast, so blocks are mined every 2.5 minutes, and you get 4 times as little of the currency, so you get 12 and a half Zcash are mined every 2.5 minutes, where Bitcoin started with 50 at
Right.
10 minutes.
Right.
So ours is just like shifted a little bit, but it's the same distribution essentially. But instead of starting exactly at 12.5 Zcash, we started at 0 and essentially linearly ramped it up to 12 over the course of 20,000 blocks. So that was mostly for just like, you know, what if like something majorly crazy happened and there was like a huge security bug in the beginning and like it destroyed everyone's value. So we kind of wanted to like allow for like a flexible period of like kind of experimentation and like just also kind of to remove the gold rush effect of like, oh, I got to start mining right now or else I'm not like it's gonna, you know, be really bad. But the people mining initially actually didn't get that much Zcash. So.
Right. Okay, so, and I should have gotten this out of the way earlier, but I mean, this is, so Zcash is proof of work.
Yeah, we have, we use a different algorithm than Bitcoin. It's like one of the attempts is to try to keep it more decentralized than Bitcoin. So being memory hard. So you're required to have memory for mining. And it reduces
instead of CPU like Bitcoin has.
You can use CPU, but like it's essentially trying to require memory so you can't create ASICs, or it's a lot harder, or it'll kind of push that down the line a little. We're not super confident in that hope. Like where there's a will, there's a way, I think.
Yeah, I know CryptoNote does the same thing where it's memory hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So, you know, we'll see. But right now you can mine with CPUs and GPUs, and that's what people do.
What about the block size? Are the blocks huge because they contain like these? Are the zero knowledge proofs like big in terms of data?
Yes, there aren't a lot of those transactions yet, unfortunately. I mean, but to be expected. So, the block size is 2 megabytes from the start.
Oh wow, okay.
Okay, and what if it gets to the point where it starts exceeding that? Like, will it be the same thing that's going on in Bitcoin right now, or will you just like the team will just change it? Or
I think we're not going to be. I think what I've heard from the core team is that we kind of want to be in between Bitcoin and Ethereum in terms of like how we manage. Like we don't want to be so like, you know, make a fork every like week like Ethereum, but we're not going to be afraid of that. Like we're not gonna, you know, we're gonna stand our ground and be like, you know, this change needs to happen and you guys can join us. Hopefully you will, because we think it's the best for the ecosystem. And so we're not afraid. We're not gonna take the like super safe, like don't change anything approach like the Bitcoin core team.
Gotcha. Stephanie Murphy always asking the hard questions.
That's right. I make it hard.
Well, all right.
No comment.
No, yeah.
I still have my Zcash hat on. Once I take the Zcash hat off after this. Yeah, that's a general disclaimer. As an employee of Zcash, my other thoughts and opinions on this show don't reflect the company at all.
I'll put that in the show notes. All right. So I know I have like a million questions more, you know, to ask on the whole thing. Well, here's one. I want to get this out of you because some people have a critique of this, and that is there is a percentage of Zcash that
Founders
goes
reward.
Founders reward, right?
Yes.
Could you explain that? The what and why?
So it's a the founders reward is it's 10%. It's okay.
Stephanie's well, all right, yeah.
Founders reward is 10% of all Zcash, and it is produced by the first 4 years of Zcash mining.
Okay.
20% goes to the founders reward address. So it's 20% of mining for the first 4 years, and then after that, there's no more founders reward. So it's essentially a 4-year period where 20% is going to this founder's reward.
Okay, now can you speak to the why?
The why is to sustain development and to keep people interested. Part of the founder's reward is going to investors that initially invested in us. So they're getting a small percentage, but they're actually getting a lot less than the founders and advisors and scientists. There's also part of it going to a strategic reserve, which essentially is just like going to be helping Zcash company sustain itself without maybe needing to look into other investors. I mean, we're not quite ruling that out, but it's just like it's helping to make sure that we're in a good spot down the line once we're out of this initial investor money. And finally, there's a portion of it is going to a foundation, which is kind of in the process of being set up. So I don't have much to say about it right now, but that's going to be, we'll announce more about that in the near future.
Sure.
But that'll be more like community focused and perhaps like, the company being more focused on like the other features or like enterprise things versus more kind of core developments being foundation based.
Okay, so now this might shock some people, but I'm actually okay with this because first off, like as I understand it, Zcash did no crowd sale.
No.
Right. Good.
Yeah.
Because I am so goddamn sick of fundraising and like selling bullshit. Well, some people do this okay, but most of the time I think it's a scam. Like where there's this like selling off of this certain token or something, and then eventually that token has to its value becomes questionable because there actually is there's nothing. The product doesn't exist yet, and I really have an issue with that.
Yep.
So I like that. The other thing is that I worry sometimes, and I'm just speaking with a degree of speculation, that Bitcoin might have gotten infected with some degree of special interests as far as development goes.
Yeah.
And in so doing was because, who the hell is paying these people?
Right.
How are they getting paid? Like there wasn't actually a model for that set up. I mean, and it's great if people do, hey, the open source movement, people doing things out of the kindness of their heart and blah, blah, blah. I think that's goddamn wonderful. Yeah. And I support that all the way. But I appreciate this and I appreciate the reason for it. I would much rather have this than a fucking fundraiser, or a crowd sale or whatever.
That's kind of how I look at it too. I can't say I'm like super thrilled about like needing something like that, but like it's just another model to experiment with, like, right? Like Zcash is an experimental cryptocurrency, and like all companies that are building something completely different and completely new, it's an experiment, and we're like the founder's reward and being able to sustain the company is a part of that experiment. So I really hope it works out because I think Zcash is really revolutionary and can, help a lot of people down the line, especially, in 4 years when a lot of like companies in the cryptocurrency space are like done.
Yeah, like, they're dead after the first 6 months.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, I mean, the itch that it scratches for me is that like I like the idea of when something's done, then I'll take your money.
Yeah.
And that's really, this is one model of that to where, okay, no, the product's out. Okay. Now we'll collect a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Like that's in my opinion, that's kind of how things, should work. I know they can't always work out that way.
Yeah.
But that's how I like to do business.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I'm kind of all right with that. I mean, I understand the critics. I get it. And like some people want to compare it to, well, that's like what, people say when they're building some toll road is like, well, we only need to collect the tolls until the road's paid off, but then they never stop collecting the tolls.
This is baked into the algorithm. So we're not like, we can't, like we could, create a fork that like changes the mining, so we keep getting that, but no one would switch to that. Like,
yeah, well, that's it, right? You'd have to do a hard fork, and then people would have to choose, and people probably wouldn't choose.
Yeah. So don't worry about that. It's not like we're taking what what we've been advertising for this whole time. And we hope that, users will understand that we're extremely committed to continue working on this. And this funding will really, really help us so we don't have to be distracted by other, how do we raise money and all this other stuff. So it's just it's really, really helpful.
Sure. No, I can appreciate that. So, all right, let's wrap up kind of the Zcash thing here. And I guess I want to know, what is the plan? I don't mind hearing your hopes, and I don't mind hearing what the company has somewhat of an idea for. Say that 4-year time frame. In 4 years, where is Zcash? Maybe what's your what do you think the value is going to be? How many people do you think will be using it? What's it going to be doing? Is there going to be something new about it that we don't, or that isn't being widely talked about?
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Go for it.
There's so many possibilities. I'm particularly looking forward to seeing where this Bolt protocol ends up. I think that's really exciting, and just being able to do things off chain but still securely and privately, because that's the one thing
off chain.
Yeah, that's what Lightning Network does.
Right,
Bolts and Lightning Network, they're very blockchains have this hard, fast property about them, is that they're an ever-growing, expanding database that you can't really do anything about. So having off-chain solutions and using the blockchains as a clearinghouse, I think is a perfectly valid way to proceed without, and still being able to use this infinitely growing ledger.
Absolutely.
So I'm really hopeful for that. And also, maybe that's a little tangent, but going back to talking about how there's different cultures around the world and even people that don't have internet that could potentially really use these types of tools.
Yes.
Lightning Network and Bolts are potential ways that you could use these use cryptocurrencies without internet, or having an intranet in your area and being able to, have a community currency and all these other things. So I'm really excited about the splintering off and being able to use privacy in all of these other situations. So there's that. We're definitely going to be doing, again, working on improving the resource requirements. That's one of the near future goals. We're not really looking to, build Windows clients or anything. That's definitely going to stay with the ecosystem, the general ecosystem.
And no reason for it not to.
Yeah.
I think that's fine.
Yeah. For now, this what I was talking about before with the viewing keys, those aren't super usable right now. They're not a part of the API, so you can't actually extract this viewing key yet.
Right.
It's implemented into the protocol, but you can't quite use it yet. So that'll be a near future implementation that I'm really looking forward to. And I don't know about price. I have no idea. If it really depends on, I think, a lot of factors.
No, it's fair enough.
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. So, Stephanie, did you have any last questions about Zcash at all? Otherwise, we're going to...
on the spot. Well, I guess I'm wondering, when do you think it will get beyond the stage of having to run a command line to install?
Well, it's kind of already there, right?
With the shielded addresses, that will require the resource reduction improvements. That's the biggest thing. Once that happens, then Jax can simply, include support for shielded addresses, and other wallets can be made. So it's growing. I think, I think next year is going to be a really great year for Zcash.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think that's a
growing ecosystem.
Everybody's rolling their eyes at me, but I think that's what it needs to really grow. And maybe it's not ready to super grow yet because it's still kind of being worked out, the details. But I think I'll use it once it's easy to use,
Yes, I totally understand that, and I hope we can facilitate that for third parties to make it easier as well.
Yeah, nothing wrong with a slow build. And
yeah, we're being cautious. I
yeah,
think it's
that's
best
good.
to be cautious, especially with security and privacy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is that really this is, in my opinion, I mean, the shorthand is this is a powerful tool for privacy advocates. So I think that's wonderful. Now, we're going to move on to some other subjects here, but before we do that, of course, I got to get to
I'm taking my Zcash hat off now.
Woo! All right, Zcash
So I'm
hat
like,
is
I'm
off.
free.
All right, I'm going to mark it at 118 or 119. The Zcash hat came off. All right, so we'll put that in the show notes right with the disclaimer. Okay. You're covered. Thank you, Zuko.
Thanks, Zuko.
Yeah, I'll just say that right now.
Shout out.
Shout
I know
out.
it's not a.
That's all right. No, we can do a shout out to Zuko. All right, so I'm going to get to a sponsor here. Speaking of paying the bills, and I just want to say, boy, if you love cryptocurrency, we're talking about Zcash is just another one of these options to perhaps store your wealth, store your value, and all of this. Another great one to do is talk about real offline storage of value, and that is gold and silver. And if you're going to do that, what I want you to check out is Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. This is one of the absolute best businesses in the world today. Believe me, they are going to take care of you if you want to get your hands on gold, silver, platinum, palladium, coins, all the good stuff. Okay, so you're going to go to gold.zog.ninja. That's the website, gold.zog.ninja. And you could talk right to Tim Fry, I imagine. He's the guy that runs the place. I love the man. He's just a top, class
That was
act.
one of my favorite interviews you've done.
With Tim Fry?
Yeah,
He's awesome.
he's so cool.
He is. He's so cool.
He's super cool.
He is. I talked to him just the other day, and I was like, I still want to get you back on the show, and we want to talk some computer history. Oh yeah, he is the best. So if you want to get the best, and here's the thing: Bitcoin preferred. This business. We're just talking about Bitcoin. This company is Bitcoin preferred. He knows.
Maybe one day Zcash preferred.
I'm going to talk to him. I bet we can make that happen. I mean, absolutely. And so the Bitcoin preferred, and they'll even buy gold and silver off of you. Okay, so this is your one-stop shop for what I like to call real cold storage. That's your precious metals. So go to gold.zog.ninja, and we cannot thank them enough for supporting Sovryn Tech and appreciating the message that gets out there from the show. So, all right, we got that out of the way, and the Zcash hat is off. I do want to take a minute. I mean, we just mentioned Bitcoin, and maybe this isn't the best time to kind of talk about it, because this is raising sort of what could be perceived as a red flag with Bitcoin. But I want to talk about the Coinbase thing for a second, okay? And I've got the story here from Motherboard. This is actually sent in from a listener, so I'm going to go ahead and get to it. And it's IRS demands identities of all U.S. Coinbase traders over a 3-year period. And I'll just read briefly here. In Bitcoin-related investigations, authorities will often follow the digital trail of an illegal transaction or suspicious user back to a specific amount or a specific account at a Bitcoin trading company. From here, investigators will likely subpoena the company for records about that particular user so they can properly identify the person suspected of the crime. The IRS, however, has taken a different approach. Instead of asking for data relating to specific individuals suspect of a crime, it has demanded Bitcoin trading site Coinbase to provide the identities of all of the firm's U.S. customers who made transactions over a 3-year period, because there is a chance they are avoiding paying taxes on their Bitcoin reserves. Coinbase has a total of millions of customers. So there's a lot of, the link will be in the show notes for this episode, and people can check it out. Coinbase has responded saying, we don't want to deal with this. They know that their clients, their customers, take privacy very seriously. And so, they're not interested in handing all this information over. Now, I'm curious about, and we're going to get into some fun stuff after this. But I'm curious what everyone's thoughts are on this. I mean, I could start off, and then I just kind of want to hear what you people think, because I had someone ask me, should I be worried? What do I think about this? And my initial thoughts are that, first off, if there's any Bitcoin company that could actually take on the government for whatever reason, this would be the one that would have enough clout, dealing with various groups. Not saying I like the groups, but Kleiner Perkins maybe, or whoever else that they've dealt with, or there's the Bank of Silicon Valley. I'll just call it that. And honestly, if you're working with them, I think you've got a lot of pull. And it's like one bank that all of Silicon Valley works with.
Yeah, Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah, Silicon Valley Bank, right? So So I don't think there's a whole lot to sweat on this for a few reasons, okay? And I think one major point needs to be brought up first, and that is that if you think Coinbase is the only company that's gotten this kind of request, or that has, gotten whatever from governments or something, you're crazy. And I almost want to put a feather in the cap of Coinbase for being the one company that's admitted it. Because
I give them kudos as well.
Yeah, because
for making it public.
Right. I mean, this is very similar to Apple. You know what Apple did with the San Bernardino case, where they admitted it, even though Apple, I think there was a lot of marketing going on there, with that. But Apple, in many ways, stood their ground based upon what they said. That case is to some degree still ongoing. But my take on the whole matter is that I think Coinbase could actually, come out of this on top. And that the users of Coinbase, might be all right. You two are welcome to have differing opinions on this matter. But go ahead. Stephanie, if you want to start, or Paige, whoever wants to start.
Yeah, I mean, I was dismayed about this news, but I can't say I was surprised. Mm-hmm. I actually thought that, I didn't have any, specific evidence of this, but I have used Coinbase, but I always thought in the back of my mind that everything I did on Coinbase was being monitored and was going to go to the government anyway.
Right.
And that they could just see it if they wanted to. So I guess I always sort of treated it like that.
Well, that's a great point to bring up, is I think a lot of people in the space, certainly people we've talked to, have always felt that, well, if you're putting it on Coinbase, somebody knows.
Yeah, you might as well be dealing directly with the IRS or the government,
right.
Maybe not the IRS, but at least the NSA or whatever other FinCEN or whatever other agencies. I mean, I feel like that's just kind of how you have to treat every banking institution that you deal with. It's almost like, don't be under the illusion that you have any privacy, because you don't.
Yeah.
Even if they're not specifically targeting you or looking at your records, they could at any point in time. And so I guess, I don't know. I feel like you have to always sort of take that approach, and just try to, it's impossible to know all the laws and comply with them, because there's just so many, and they change and
especially with Bitcoin.
Right, especially with Bitcoin.
Yeah, very murky waters.
You can't be expected
Shifting
to
sands.
be your own accountant and who has money to hire an accountant. Not everybody, right? Some people do and some companies do, but not everybody. So, for individuals, it's kind of just a risky thing. There's always that risk that you'll get some letter someday or something like that. You know? So that's why I say I wasn't surprised by this. Mm-hmm. I kind of just assumed that it was already happening. Now I wonder what's going to happen. Is Coinbase going to take the IRS to court, and then the court's just going to rubber stamp it in favor of the IRS?
I think the evidence stands that that's not always, especially with Silicon Valley companies, that doesn't always happen.
Right.
In fact, most of the times it seems kind of it goes almost the other way. When a company makes a big enough stink, because there's I'm getting into the realm of speculation, but I think there's a very tenuous relationship between the government and Silicon Valley. To where there's certain points where you can only push so hard, and then something happens. Even Microsoft is taking a relatively impressive stand against a lot of the U.S. government's. And that includes.
I heard Bill Gates just cashed out a bunch of Microsoft stock or something like that, $25 billion or.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I just saw it on Facebook right now. So
oh wow! Okay.
I don't know if that's true
Breaking
or not.
Breaking news.
I don't.
I'll have to look into that.
I don't know. Don't take my word for it. Maybe look it up. But if that's the case, then if they are putting pressure on Microsoft, you've talked about Bill Gates before and speculated that somebody got to him at some point. Yeah. But I guess I agree with you, Brian. I'm glad that Coinbase is not just oh yes, here you go. Here's all our customers' information, and it's millions of people. It's already we already know there's a huge dragnet going on because of those Bank Secrecy Act reports, right. the suspicious activity reports, yes, so-called, yep. Which is they can be triggered by almost literally anything. If they think you're putting in more than putting in or taking out more than $10,000. If they think you're taking out like $9,900 to avoid filing a report, they have to file a report. Like, so it's like literally anything. And they get millions of these things per day. FinCEN gets millions of them per day.
Yeah.
I think it's on the order of millions at least per week or per month. I mean, there's just a lot of them that get filed. Most of them, I don't know, they probably never go anywhere. But if they were actively targeting you in some kind of investigation, they could like bring them up all the records, I suppose. So what was I trying to say with that? Like, I guess I figured the same thing was happening with Coinbase, and there's probably
this whole time it was already all going on.
Yeah, that like any Bitcoin transaction would be a suspicious thing in their eyes. So I'm kind of surprised that Coinbase actually got this far. You know what I mean? Like Coinbase was always they were trying to toe this really fine line between having the PR that would like sort of that would let paranoid libertarian Bitcoin users feel comfortable using their service, right? And giving them their data and sort of trusting them with that they weren't going to just kind of hand it over to the government, but also like looking like they were complying with all the regulations and like they weren't trying to encourage like crime to happen. So they had this very difficult like PR like situation to traverse, Yeah. And I think they've managed to sort of do it so far. I mean, they have actually, I know I've seen like a bunch of Reddit posts from people saying like, oh, Coinbase just shut down my account without any explanation, or they claimed that they were monitoring the Bitcoin address and I used it to buy marijuana or something, and then they shut down my account, which I've seen a couple of those reports, but I guess it didn't happen to enough people where they stopped growing their user base because they have millions of people that have signed up for it. So yeah, I guess good for them for not just like giving the government like anything it wants. But at the same time, I also think like if they did do that, if they did just hand over all their data to the IRS, probably some of the people at Coinbase and their friends would come under fire, like, and their companies would come under fire because then they'd be targeting every Bitcoin company. They'd be targeting every person who works at a Bitcoin company who gets paid in Bitcoin. They'd be targeting everybody that's their friend that they've introduced to Bitcoin, and they don't want to like bring that shit upon their friends and family. So, I guess I could understand like why they would want to fight it too.
Sure.
So, yeah, I don't know exactly. What was the original question? Like, I'm trying to figure out.
Oh, I was just curious I think you raised great points.
Yeah.
I was just curious, like, your overall thoughts on this. I mean, the original question was, did they have anything to worry about? I mean, you can just give that a yes or a no.
Did who have anything to worry?
This emailer.
Oh, does the emailer have something to worry about?
Yeah.
Yes, I do think they have something to worry about, but I think we all have something to worry about whenever we deal with any kind of bank.
Okay. Well, absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
maybe Coinbase is a little extra to worry about because you're part of a smaller pool of people. Like you're part of a pool of a couple million people instead of hundreds of millions of people that use Bank of America or Chase or whatever.
Right.
But so maybe like the chances that you specifically could be targeted would be increased. But I think like if you weren't thinking of Coinbase all along as something that you have to kind of deal with carefully and that could potentially be subject to legal scrutiny or whatever, then you should take that attitude towards any bank, basically.
Yeah, fair. No, well, that's great advice all the way around, and that actually bolsters the importance of financial security and financial privacy and all that, right? So,
Paige,
Paige,
did you have anything you wanted to?
Yeah, what do you got? What do you think?
Well, I was just actually wondering about this article. Is this the one that? When is this article from?
This one's from Motherboard. Let me just pull it up real quick.
Just out of curiosity, because I think I read something more recently.
So this is November 18th.
What's today?
Today is the 30.
No,
or sorry,
December
we're in
3rd.
December, right?
Oh,
December 3rd.
Yeah. Okay.
Time.
So yeah. So I think I actually read a more recent update about that. The IRS got a warrant from. So like it's not up to Coinbase anymore. Like the IRS got a warrant.
So now
from
they have
court.
a warrant.
Yeah. So now it's like
To see everybody's transactions?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think from the years 2014 and 2015.
Okay.
I don't think they included 2013 in that though.
Okay. So it got a little more specified.
Yes.
Now,
Which is interesting because 2014 was when it crashed, right?
Was that the
price?
So, yeah.
Right.
So if you have like it's not like you were making a lot of money
been losing
holding
money in 14.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think, even with that information, like, all the points made still totally, valid and worth bringing up. But now that raises something interesting. And if you have more to say, Paige, I want to get to it. But I anytime something like this happens, I cannot help but feel there are very specific people that they're going after.
I agree.
Yeah, and they need the net. They're going after dolphins, but they know they got to grab some tuna, even though they're not going to eat the tuna.
Yeah,
you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think there's super specific people that they are going after, and it's probably and with Bitcoin, the way Bitcoin works, I think you have to. I'm not saying it's the right thing. Of course it isn't. Okay, but you have to do that dragnet kind of style to be able to pinpoint even maybe one person that you're going after.
Yeah.
You've got to grab everybody to get that dolphin.
It might not even be the one person. It might be the values. Like they're seeing huge amounts of money being moved in Bitcoin.
Right.
And they're not going for the people that are, buying $1,000 on Coinbase. They're going for the people that are super verified, can go up to tens, 20,000 that they're buying. And
to want to research the Willybot crash, that raises a whole other element. Because what if this is all about Carpellis? Like, what if this is all about, Mt. Gox, right? Or Mount Gox, whatever you want to call it. Like, what if that's what this is really about? That's my end opinion on it, is I agree, Stephanie, take all the steps that you talked about and everything. But I really can't help but feel that when you see things like this, even though it hasn't happened necessarily with Bitcoin, perhaps, other than the fact that it probably hasn't, just nobody ever told, the Bitcoin companies ever told you, like I said earlier. These things happen in the financial world, and usually they are going after a very specific target. Usually super specific.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Sure. Yeah. So, what do you have any other thoughts on the whole thing?
No, I think I was a little worried, but we talked about it. I feel better.
Right.
That's good.
So, listener, feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, that's my take.
Like, there's nothing you can do about it. Like, just don't, maybe if you were one person that was transacting a lot on Coinbase, a lot of value.
Like a lot. And
not filing, then maybe.
You're talking in the thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Yeah, like 5-6 digits.
Maybe you might want to talk to a lawyer and accountant.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you're just buying a few thousand over months, I don't know.
Yeah. And 2013 not being included, that's interesting.
Yes, because that's when the price went up. Right?
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Well, I think
I would fact check my statement about that, but I'm pretty sure I read this article yesterday or the day before.
Okay.
So
yeah, so definitely update the research on it. This is something to keep an eye on.
Maybe you can add a link to look up the
Yep, I will make a
new article.
Right, I'll find a new article and I will put it in the show notes so everybody can check on it. So this is the joy of live radio, or it's not exactly live, but it's recorded like it's live. So anyway, I didn't mean the sneeze. If people heard the sneeze, I was talking about the fact that we don't have all the facts right at our fingertips here. So anyway, okay, I'm going to take a second to get to another sponsor quick, and then we're going to move on to some other stuff. And what I want to tell you about is that, boy, if you do want to spend some Bitcoin, and because you still should, using Bitcoin, it's still a wonderful, tool. Just do it right. But if you want to deal with a company that really does it right and is actually activist focused, and they understand everything that we're talking about in this whole episode, that's why they're a sponsor of Sovryn Tech. Okay, and if you need some web hosting. And not just that, if you want to deal not just with great, freedom money, I don't want to just say free money because that sounds ridiculous, but freedom money like Bitcoin, okay, or you want to deal in it, say, in a more free market, this company also will help you get set up with the best open bazaar, which that's about one of the freest markets out there in the world, the best open bazaar experience you could possibly have, especially if you want to start an open bazaar business. What I want you to check out is agorasthosting.com. Okay, agorasthosting.com. They're phenomenal. These guys are great. I know the team. They're just great people. And you might look at their prices and go, well, that's a little higher than what I'm used to. But you got to understand the amount of customer service, the personal touch that these guys bring to anybody that comes on as a web host, or if you want to run your open bazaar business on there, you cannot beat it. You cannot match these guys. And they, like I said, they get it. I mean, they're not just activist focused. Anybody should be dealing with them. Kind of like what we're talking about. You know, no matter what you're doing, you want to secure things up. These guys understand that, and they're totally on board with that. And they, you know, from the back end to the front end of this business, they are concerned with cryptocurrencies. They're concerned about Bitcoin. You know, they do amazing work, and they're powering so much of, you know, if you're involved in the liberty movement, anarchism and all that, believe me, they are powering a lot of that. You know, they're the back end of much of this. They're the backbone of a lot of the online presence for all of this. I mean, they're wonderful. So agoristhosting.com. That's who you want to check out. They are worth it. And believe me, that, you know, we talked about Bitcoin preferred businesses. They are Bitcoin preferred, and they know why you want to use Bitcoin. They understand you. So if you want a great web host, or if you want to start an Open Bazaar business, they offer both of these options. And the Open Bazaar end of things is like, I mean, very unique in my opinion. You want to go with agoristhosting.com, and we cannot thank them enough for supporting Sovryn Tech.
And in case you don't know how to spell agorist, it's agorist. So it's Agorist.
Yes. Yeah, which of course, Agora.
Some people say it agorist, and it sounds like Aggerist. You know,
right.
like, but
Yes.
it's Agora, like the Agora, the market. You know,
Yeah.
it's agorist. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Maybe I'll start pronouncing it that way. That's a good idea.
Maybe, but I wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah, and of course, if you go to the website, if you go to any of the Sovryn Tech websites, there's, you know, the list of sponsors is always there, and it's in the show notes for every episode. So you can find the spelling there if, you know, worst to worst. But yeah, thank you again for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Now, let's shake it up. What do we got here? Yeah, we got some time, and even if this one runs a few minutes longer, I think we'll be all right. So I reviewed a show. Let's get into some entertainment. Let's have a little fun with this, okay? And then we'll see where it takes us from there. I reviewed a show called Startup. And we've been talking blockchain, Bitcoin, and all that this whole episode, so why stop now? And this show is on Crackle. And the show is all about a cryptocurrency that this young woman develops. And in this show, it's not just like trying to create a fictionalized creation of Bitcoin, because they mention Bitcoin in the show. Like they say, oh, this is like Bitcoin. And the coin in the show is called GenCoin. And we've all watched it here. Everybody here has seen the show.
I watched it on your recommendation from the show.
Right.
So appreciate the recommendation.
Absolutely. What I appreciate is having such an amazing audience, such a lovely audience of people that actually listen to this show. So thank you. But so we've all seen this, the show Startup. Now, my take on it, and I'll be very brief. My take on it was that it was good, but it didn't focus enough on the technology, in my opinion, to differentiate it from any other kind of crime drama. And so it sort of played out like if you've watched, you know, any season of like NYPD Blue or something. I feel like, you know, it could all just be transposed onto this show.
Yeah.
That was sort of my take. I mean, what did you think, Paige?
I kind of agree with that sentiment. It didn't really like the whole, like, including a Bitcoin, or, you know, blockchain cryptocurrency in it was like kind of interesting, but it wasn't like it wasn't really the focus.
It felt like an afterthought.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It felt like
device.
how do we get a bunch of people to be interested in this, like something a little more unique than
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so kind of it felt like a gimmick. Like this is how we hook people into this show, even though maybe it's not the most original thing on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Now, Stephanie, what were your thoughts?
I love the acting from one of the actors and characters in particular, which I think Paige also liked. The guy who played Ronald Dacey, the Haitian guy.
The Haitian, the Black Haitian guy.
Yep, and like I just thought he was awesome, and he kind of like stole the show. I liked how they characterized. Like the characters were really good to me. That was probably my favorite part of it. Like down to that the what's his name, Zach, or the white guy that's like, you know, working at the
the guy that started
the bro, and his girlfriend, like his millennial girlfriend, like they were just so like right on, those characters. I mean, they were just really good. So, I liked it. I guess I was expecting maybe a little more of a subversive angle of like kind of promoting cryptocurrency, but they weren't. It was like GenCoin is supposed to be like better than Bitcoin, but they don't explain why, except that it's like it's closed source, which I would say it doesn't make it better.
Yeah, it's proprietary. It's a proprietary blockchain. So I mean, I guess like with that like whole startup mentality, having proprietary code is kind of seen as like an asset for like getting funding and stuff like that.
Right, a lot of startups will do that at first, and then they'll open source it later.
Because a lot of the show was them trying to get money.
Yeah.
That's, I think maybe that's why they were pitching it as better, because like it's proprietary and like no one can own it. But that's like, I don't know, that's a really flawed view of security. Like saying because you're hiding something, it's gonna be like secure.
Right.
I loved how they were making fun of startups at the point where they got that office and they were trying to sort of fake it till they make it. Yeah. And they got the office and they hired the intern that they didn't pay.
Yeah, kind of the stereotypical ditzy intern, and that was something. So okay, so I think we'd all give this show a thumbs up.
Yeah, it was definitely entertaining. I watched the whole season because I like wanted to see what was happening next. So yeah, it was good. But
okay. But, well, I want to get into that. But Stephanie, you'd agree with, I mean, you enjoyed it. You really liked it.
I did. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I wanted to keep watching it.
Yeah, I don't know that we're going to get a second season. I haven't seen any.
I have a bad feeling that we're not.
Yeah, especially because Crackle is such like an upstart network.
Yeah.
It's trying to be Netflix or Hulu, and it's just not. Yeah. So that's kind of problematic. And the production level on the show is actually really good.
Yeah.
I mean, they had to spend a bit of money on it.
Yeah. It was really good.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a gamble on their part. I mean, I think what could have made the show better was concentrate more on the technology. The example I always give is like, look, when it comes to like Star Trek, which is perhaps the ultimate expression of technology on television, the Enterprise is as loved as any character. So, you can make the technology a centerpiece of a show, and people will get it and they'll stick to it. And it becomes almost a symbol of the show instead of the people. So, go ahead.
You remember that, it was Star Trek, right? That Thomas Hunt made those YouTube videos of just the ships.
Oh yeah,
or was that Star Wars?
No,
that was Star Trek. Okay,
yeah, that was Thomas Hunt of the world.
Mad Bitcoins.
Yeah, Mad Bitcoins. Yeah, I feel so bad. I've wanted to work with him on a show, and it's totally my fault. I haven't had the time because he wanted to come on, and we were just going to talk Star Trek the whole time, and I was like, absolutely, I'll do an episode. Where we just talk
he
Star
would
Trek.
be really good.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah.
If you haven't seen those videos, they're actually really cool. It's just like all of the. I think it's from movies, maybe the Star Trek.
He just did the movies.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all the ship scenes. And it's still so engaging, which proves the point is that, look, the technology can be the centerpiece of the day. I'm glad you brought that up, Paige. Right on. And any time to mention, good people, I'm game for that. So, now here's the thing is that I made a statement, and this is where Paige, suddenly, hops on Signal and says, what the fuck are you talking about? No, it didn't go like that. But anyway, and that was, I was like, okay, so Startup wasn't like great. It was very good, but it's certainly better than Mr. Robot. That was the statement I made. And then Paige is like, what? What are you talking about? Now, Stephanie, unfortunately, hasn't
I have not seen Mr. Robot. Because, Brian, you could have showed it to me, I guess, but you never suggested we watch it. You watched it by yourself, and you left me out of it.
Well, So... Okay, I don't know if I want to get into the reasons why perhaps that was, but oh no, there's nothing. It's nothing nefarious.
Are you going to blame me for it?
No. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's something I've learned. I'm not blaming you for anything whatsoever. Okay, so here's something I feel I've learned. Oh, she's giving me the sweet face. Here's something I've learned about Stephanie is that like I think if a show is a slow build, and there's nothing wrong with this. Okay, if a show is like a really slow build, like if it's not like hitting you from the get go, which admittedly, like I think it was the end of the first episode of Mr. Robot, which spoiler alert, folks, he jumps off the side of a pier. Like that definitely hooks you, or not a pier, but like off the side of a building or something. But like it, I feel like Stephanie and correct me if I'm wrong. Like if you think I'm totally wrong in thinking this, like if it doesn't like have like a really great hook or like not action, but like I don't know, some like high drama or something like starting out. If it's like a slow thing, I don't want to waste your time. Like I feel like you don't want to stick with it.
But there's a hole in that theory because
tell me the hole.
You're very fond of showing me shows that you like, even when they have a slow build.
Yeah, but
like Stargate or Babylon 5.
Right, exactly. But I know that those shows like get better. Like I know that the juice is worth the squeeze. You know.
But you know that Mr. Robot gets better, but you didn't even bother to try to show it to me.
That's the problem. It gets worse. Like
disagreed.
Yeah, right. Well, we'll get into that. So, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with how you like your entertainment. It's not a knock at all. I just I felt like the show just. I don't, for me, and I talked about it when the first season came out. I never watched any of the second season. But I'll just like. I have no problem whatsoever with like drugs, but I just felt like the show just kind of like went super trippy, and it lost kind of like Startup, where it lost sight of the technology. That's what got me at first. Okay, I mean I don't mind the trippy stuff either. That can work. I mean you think of like Fight Club or something where. Well, I don't know if I want to give the ultimate spoiler away of Mr. Robot if nobody's ever watched it, but I can dig that, but. Yeah, what was initially what everybody was recommending it to me for faded away after like episode 6 of the first season. I felt like whereas like, oh, this is really cool. It's actually showing you how to hack. It's actually showing you how to do all these different things. And it's like, it's really, it's very realistic on all that. So Paige, I'll ask you, I mean, what did you like about it?
I liked it for its kind of like, especially in the second season, which I know you haven't seen yet.
Yeah. You can spoil away, but yeah.
I don't really have like much to spoil. I just like in terms of like how it was crafted and how different each episode is, like you really just don't know what's going to happen next.
Uh-huh.
So I really like that about at least specifically the second season. Like the second season is so out there in so many different directions, kind of playing off of this the main character having a lot of like
he has personality disorders.
He does have personality.
Yeah.
We won't talk too much about it in case you haven't seen it. But like, yeah, and like the second season just like takes that to the next level, which like it brings you into his personality disorder, so you don't even know what's right or accurate about the scene that you're watching.
Right,
like,
what's
you're
the
second
reality?
guessing yourself. And sometimes that goes on for a few episodes. So like you're just like at the end of like 4 episodes, you're like, whoa, I have to remember the last 4 episodes and be like, whoa, that whole thing was completely different than what I thought. So I really like the way that the director kind of makes it, just like keeps it exciting. I think I also I like the characters a lot, and and I think maybe I can't quite remember, maybe by the end of the first season they stopped showing a lot of the tech, but like that picks up again. Like it's not like
okay, because I was under the impression in the second season like it wasn't even really there. Like that. So here's what the other part that I liked about it. Like I love the whole fuck society. Well, yeah. That's kind of a joke in the show, F society, right?
Yeah.
But I love the whole screw all, like some of the little inner dialogues that Elliot, the main character, has are brilliant. Like where he's talking about Facebook and everything.
Yeah.
He's so right. And it's like, it's amazing to hear that on any kind of television, especially on a show that's on USA. And I loved that. I feel like that kind of went away, and sort of like there's this narrative of
that comes back in the second season a lot.
Okay. All right. So in the very first 30 seconds, and so I can't imagine this is a spoiler. In the very first 30 seconds, it sounds like the hint that I got was that this show was going to be about going after, like, in almost a real sense, the Illuminati. Like, we're going to go after the people that are controlling everything.
Yeah.
And even that kind of went away. Like, I don't want to give much away, but I feel like that whole kind of, is that in the second season? Like, are you still getting more of this? Like, we're going to bring down the powers that be. Like,
the second season is like the aftermath.
Right,
of
because at the end of the first season, and even that, like, you don't really get it. Like, I don't know. I didn't feel like there was a payoff. You see it.
You see it a lot in the because this whole second season is like living with the fact that they did this, and like, like now there's people looking for them, and now there's other characters involved because there's now investigations around it. So it kind of turns this whole new direction, which is really allows for allows just like, I think the director to explore different characters and like different ways to express himself. Like I think the artistic quality is one of my favorite things. Like each episode is really diverse.
Definitely artsy.
Yeah. And I like, maybe I'm biased because I'm like an art nerd, but
that's cool.
I really appreciate the uniqueness of Mr. Robot compared to other mainstream TV shows. I don't watch TV shows, really, other than like Cartoon Network when I'm stoned or something. Like, that's really all I do.
Yeah.
So, like, from that kind of perspective, I just, like, was really drawn to it, and, like, kind of, like, talking about the drug thing. Like, I understand where you're coming from, and, like, the whole maybe, like, stereotyping hackers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, you just hit it. Yeah.
I know what you mean, but there is, like, I would say there is an issue in hacker community. Like, not everyone's, like, as stable as you are. Like,
well, thank you.
There's a lot of hackers that are depressed and lonely because they are really smart, but they just suck at talking to people. And like, there's this whole culture of, you know, just slipping into drug use that I think is maybe more prevalent than we see in the public.
You know, that's actually, in all seriousness, and I empathize with that. And that's a subject I'd actually love to have you on again in the future to talk about.
Let's do that.
That's something, that's a conversation that needs to be had. So, but that is something that came up from, in fact, like the person that recommended it to me, or not directly, but I listened to his show, is one of my personal heroes, Steve Gibson of Security Now. He recommended it, and he even brought up the point which you just made. He says, like, look, he's like, could people stop saying that hackers are these, like, you know, oddballs? And I mean, I use those terms with respect because I've been certainly called that plenty in my life. You know, weirdos or whatever else, or, you know, drug, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, that's kind of the camp that I fell into. It's like, oh, can we stop this? It's like, you know, some like we are normal, or some of us or whatever are a little more normal. How to describe that?
There is maybe a stereotype that this Mr. Robot is kind of pushing, but like, it enables the character. Specifically, it works for the character Elliot.
And it works for the, you know, the story, for the drama.
Because of that, I don't have an issue. I do see, like, maybe the generalization problem that comes along with it, though.
Yeah, no, fair. All right, so 2 questions. One is that what, you know, like a couple sentences, what do you think makes it better than, why did you like it more than Startup? And then the second question will be, if you were to sell the show to Stephanie, Mr. Robot, like, why should she watch it? You know, give her like the quick pitch on how to do that. But let's do the first question, which is, why is it better than Startup? I
just like different, like, I think Startup was just a little too, like, mainstream for me. I think that's just really what it comes down to.
Sure.
I know you said you liked, like, all the sex that happened in it.
Well, yeah, you know,
but that died out. Right?
No,
that was only in the beginning. That was like the hook to get you.
So the first episode they did it like 4 times, and they never did that again. But I think they still had one sex scene.
They had a sex scene near the end.
Yeah, maybe it did die out,
but it did die out. It was definitely a lot more in the first like 3 or 4 episodes.
That's great. You really did listen. You know me so well. Anyway, yeah. But I mean, Mr. Robot has almost zilch as far as sex.
Yeah.
I mean, just shy. Like, I mean, there's like hookers that are, or characters that are sex workers and all that.
Yeah.
But okay, so 2 main Startup, 2 mainstream. That's what makes it the inferior product.
Yeah. And I guess just like as a pitch, I think Mr. Robot is just like a complete, like, I haven't seen a TV show like it before. And it just makes, like, it's fun to see actual tools that I use being used by people in this show. And, like, maybe it dies out a little bit, but it's not like they still are texting with each other and stuff throughout the show. So you keep seeing instances of actual tools and, like, it's just like, it's just unique in its production, and I think the characters are really unique. Like Elliot, I think he's like, him as an actor, he's just like
Well, he already took an Emmy, didn't he?
I get maybe.
Yeah, I think
I don't know.
He took an Emmy.
He's just like he himself is like a different type of actor. I think he did a lot of like children's acting and stuff before. Oof. So it's like a completely 180, but like he's just like the director didn't choose these like standard, cookie cutter actors for
Definitely
it.
Didn't go with the Hollywood handsome.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So Stephanie, what do you think? I mean, are you sold?
I was sold before Paige started talking. I just wanted to watch it because you never showed it to me.
All right.
I wanted to see it.
Okay, we'll watch it. Maybe we'll get to it before, because we're in SG1 right now, and that goes 10 seasons. Then there's 2 sequel shows, so maybe we'll watch it ahead of that. Yeah, but SG1's fucking great. Of course, Stephanie. You're not that impressed with Stargate SG1 so far, right?
It's been a rough start getting into it. It's no
a tough
Star
first
Trek.
season.
Let's just put it that way.
What is? Right. I think Paige would even agree with that. What is? So you actually, you know what? You mentioned Thomas Hunt. He's the other person that agrees with me about Mr. Robot. Like on all my critiques.
He would.
Yeah. We were talking, I think we were in Vegas or whatever. We were at some conference and talking, and he's like, yeah, he says exactly. He's like, the show, like after like half season, he felt it went off. But Paige loves it. So if you haven't watched Mr. Robot, folks, I certainly recommend that you do.
Download it.
Yeah, woo! So, and Stephanie, maybe we'll get